broadcast tonight, leaders of South Korea, U.S., and Japan will hold a trilateral summit Tuesday evening, local time, marking the first formal talks between President Park and her Japanese counterpart since they took office more than a year ago. President Park's deregulation drive is starting to take shape. The government is to take steps to legalize food truck service, which was under surveillance for food sanitation and road traffic. Plus, Malaysia's Prime Minister confirms their worst fears of the missing airliner, that the plane has been lost and none of those on board survived. These stories and more next on Arirang News at 8.
Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Tuesday, March 25th here in Seoul. I am Hague. We begin this evening in The Hague, where the most anticipated meeting of the Nuclear Security Summit is drawing close. President Park Geun-hye, for the first time since taking office more than a year ago, will sit down across from Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of the summit. While North Korea's nuclear program will top the agenda, many will be watching closely for signs of a thaw in recent Korea-Japan tensions. Our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun reports.
The leaders of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan are meeting on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague on Tuesday. The Washington-led summit will largely focus on the trilateral efforts to denuclearize North Korea. There's a question of whether the three members of the six-party nuclear talks will be able to find a way to restart the multilateral dialogue that has been stalled since late 2008. Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo demand a sincere commitment from Pyongyang to fulfill its previous disarmament pledges. Pyongyang and its main ally Beijing want an immediate return to talks. China and the U.S. clearly differed on the preconditions to and the timing of the six-way nation dialogue when Presidents Xi and Obama met in The Hague Monday. Many are eyeing Tuesday's three-way talks because they represent the first between President Park and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe amid strained ties over historical and territorial issues. Although the most contentious issues, such as Japan's denials of its colonial-era atrocities and its claims to Korea-controlled Dokdo Island, are not on the agenda, there's speculation as to whether the two leaders will discuss them. And Seoul is also paying close attention to Tokyo's sincerity over its historical wrongdoings. In fact, an aide to the Japanese Prime Minister earlier this week contradicted Abe's reaffirmation to Japan's wartime sex slavery apology, saying it could be revised depending on the outcome of Tokyo's review. In any case, some pundits say Tuesday's summit could offer a break to prolonged impasse between Seoul and Tokyo. Choi You-sun, Arirang News, The Hague.
Another report has surfaced that could add more weight to the evidence of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement during World War II. It shows that the United States concluded years ago that women were systematically forced into sexual servitude. Sun Jung-in has more.
This is a report published in 2006 by the National Archives and Records Administration on behalf of the Nazi War Crimes and Japanese Imperial Government Records Interagency Working Group. Titled Researching Japanese War Crimes, the 222-page report was made after scouring 8.5 million pages of records related to Japanese and Nazi war crimes previously identified by the U.S. government. Included in the report is a description of how the Japanese military contracted private vendors to set up so-called comfort stations for its troops dating back to as early as 1932. The work began in 2000 when Samuel Berger, then National Security Advisor to President Bill Clinton, directed agencies to locate classified records on war crimes committed by agents of the Japanese government from 1931 to 1945. The working group reportedly advised U.S. agencies to pay particular attention to any records and materials related to the Comfort Women program. Comfort women is a term that refers to women and girls forced by the Japanese military to work as prostitutes during World War II. The group sent their findings on to the U.S. Congress in April 2007. Local experts in Korea predict the latest findings may work against the current administration of Shinzo Abe in Japan, which has long been denying that the Comfort Women system involved coercion. Sun Jung-in, Arirang News.
Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott will visit Korea next month for summit talks with President Park Geun-hye. The presidential office of Cheongwade announced Tuesday that the Australian leader will arrive in Seoul on April 8th for a two-day visit. The two leaders will discuss ways to strengthen cooperation in various fields, including political, economic, and cultural sectors, along with the security situation on the Korean peninsula. They're also aiming to ink a free trade deal agreed upon in December. It'll be the second meeting between the two leaders after their first engagement on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Brunei last October. Some strong words out of North Korea aimed directly at the United States. It has accused Washington of hurting the regime's relations with South Korea and hampering the possible resumption of six-party talks on its nuclear program. Our Yoo Di-an has more.
North Korea has pointed the finger squarely at the United States for the failed resumption of the six-party talks, which are aimed at ending the North's nuclear weapons program. Speaking at a news conference at the United Nations on Monday, Pyongyang's Deputy UN Ambassador Ri Dong-il said the U.S. was using its country's nuclear program as a political bargaining chip.
As long as the U.S. is continuing nuclear blackmails against the DPRK, United States should clearly know the fact that additional measures will continue to be taken by the DPRK in order to demonstrate the power of the self-defensive nuclear deterrent.
He said the U.S. was to blame for the stalled six-party talks, citing their refusal to meet without preconditions. The six-party talks, which involve China, Japan, Russia, the U.S., and the two Koreas, are aimed at disarming North Korea of its nuclear weapons. The talks have been stalled since late 2008. China has been making a push in recent months to restart the talks, but the U.S. remains insistent that North Korea must first dismantle its nuclear program before talks can continue. Lee also said the United States' refusal to halt annual joint military drills with South Korea are undermining prospects for improved relations between the two Koreas. The latest criticisms follow an accusation on March 14th that the U.S. is setting up a human rights conspiracy against North Korea. That came in response to a U.S. human rights report that called out the North for numerous violations. Yoo Di-an, Arirang News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Yoo Ji-hye for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on Arirang TV.
Move aimed at fostering startups is part of the government's three-year economic innovation plan. China's economic growth has weakened in recent years, but don't expect that to affect Korea all that much. Korean Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok is giving assurances the impact of the slowing Chinese economy will be limited. Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
For Korea's top economic policymaker, the slowing Chinese economy does not appear to be a major concern. During a press briefing on Tuesday, Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok said that the slowdown in the world's second largest economy will not have a major impact on the nation's growth.
Despite the slowdown in emerging economies, export to emerging economies, including China and the ASEAN countries, have remained steady.
He pointed out that 80% of Korea's exports to China are half-finished goods, which are exported again to other nations. Hyun, however, said China's slowing growth could become a risk to the global economy as it could negatively impact financial markets. He said the government would continue to look out for external shocks. Regarding the free trade agreement talks with China, Hyun said he sees no major obstacles ahead, especially with the leaders of the two nations having agreed to finalize trade talks by the end of this year. To push ahead with the government's plan to ease regulations, Hyun pledged to make clear the benefits of cutting down on red tape.
We will make the results of deregulation public so that people can make their own decisions on the government's plan.
Hyun also cited the importance of looking for creative ways to streamline regulations so that the government's drive to bolster corporate investment through deregulation gets a further boost. Hong Jie, Arirang News.
And the wheels are in motion on President Park Geun-hye's drive toward deregulation. Starting as early as May, it will no longer be illegal for individuals to renovate commercial trucks into food trucks. This paves the way for the legalization of food truck services, and it comes just 5 days after the president pledged to cut the volume of regulations by 20% over the next 2 years. Our Connie Kim reports.
In line with President Park Geun-hye's plan to cut regulations on business activities, it'll be legal for individuals and businesses to renovate commercial trucks into food trucks starting as early as May. The Transport Ministry made the announcement Tuesday, and it follows a request by a food truck manufacturer made during a special televised debate last week. Food trucks are currently categorized as special automobiles, and therefore it's illegal to renovate other types of trucks for the purposes of serving food on them. While it normally takes 40 days for such a change to take place, the Transport Ministry plans to expedite the process and shorten the period to 20 days. In other plans, the ministry says it'll ease regulations on the tuning of automobiles and will allow for the renovation of vans into camping cars and vehicles for the disabled by the end of this year. The move comes after President Park Geun-hye last Thursday stressed that reforming current regulatory measures would encourage businesses to invest actively, which would ultimately lead to job creation. President Park pledged to cut the volume of registered regulations to 80% of the current level by 2016. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
On the eve of the official launch of a new political coalition party called the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, a heated debate was held at the National Assembly, largely centering on what the new politics should entail. Our political correspondent, Choi You-sun, was there.
The coalition party that will be led by Democratic Party leader Kim Han-gil and independent lawmaker An Chol-soo aims to bring about an era of new politics. But what is new politics? That was the very title of a policy debate forum at the National Assembly on Tuesday. Supporters of the newly formed New Politics Alliance for Democracy, or NPAD, joined with academics and lawmakers to discuss the future of the political landscape in Korea. A political analyst said any form of new politics must focus on narrowing gaps in society.
New politics should be able to solve the socioeconomic problems that society currently faces. Old politics has failed to do that. We'll have to wait and see whether the Grand Coalition will be able to do the job.
Experts said a priority should also be placed on building a fair welfare state that helps the people. Professor Moon Jin-young from Hague University asked that the government make greater efforts to ensure there are no blind spots in the current welfare system.
Although the Korean government has worked on its welfare system, it is regrettable that incidents occur like the one we saw recently, where families are committing suicide due to financial hardships. We need to formulate comprehensive measures to help low-income families.
Pundits urge the government to keep President Park Geun-hye's welfare promises that include providing a monthly allowance of some $185 to all senior citizens over the age of 65. The participants also voiced a need to prepare for a peaceful reunification of the two Koreas, while also keeping an emphasis on national security and denuclearizing the North. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
Korea is continuing to broaden its economic foothold in the ever-expanding European Union. The government signed an additional protocol to Korea's existing free trade pact with the EU on Tuesday to bring Croatia under the deal. Seoul's trade ministry says the revision of the Korea-EU FTA is in light of Croatia joining the 28-nation trading bloc in July of last year. Korea will provide almost all of the FTA's trade benefits to Croatia, with just a few exceptions in the service sector. Korea and the EU signed a tentative deal recognizing Croatia's inclusion last November. Korea's largest automaker Hyundai Motor has pulled the curtain back on its new Sonata model. The fully remodeled sedan is expected to revamp its mid-size car sales at home and abroad. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Hyundai Motor hopes the new Sonata will help fight back a sizable global market share from its competitors, Toyota and Honda. Hyundai says the latest Sonata has better fuel efficiency. It can travel 12.1 kilometers on a liter of gasoline. That's 0.6 kilometers more than Toyota's Camry. It's also less expensive than other models priced between $21,000 and $28,000. The Korean automaker hopes improvements made in Sonata's technology and safety features will improve the company's fortunes at home and abroad.
You get a sense of the premium quality in every detail. It offers a thrilling driving experience not yet seen in other mid-sized cars. The new Sonata is safer and equipped with user-oriented technologies.
The state-of-the-art technologies include a warning system for drivers when they deviate from the road lane. Advanced smart cruise control function automatically controls speed by measuring the distance from the car in front. But will this be enough for the Korean automaker to turn the table on its competitors? Sales in Korea shrank by 4% in 2013 from the previous year, amid questions that the company exaggerated the fuel efficiency of its latest Santa Fe model. Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors had to shell out around $400 million last year to settle lawsuits in the U.S. for overstating the fuel economy ratings of their vehicles. Hyundai says it will try to boost its market share in the U.S. to 4.7% this year, which fell to 4.6% last year, down 0.3 percentage points from 2012. Chung Mong-gu, the head of Hyundai Kia Automotive Group, forecasts the weakest sales growth in 8 years for 2014, largely due to the appreciation of the Korean currency. Hyundai Motor plans to sell 228,000 new Sonatas this year, 63,000 in Korea, and 165,000 overseas. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Let's get the latest on the top stories on the global front. From the tragic end to the missing Malaysia airliner to the opening of a UN meeting on climate change in Japan, we go live to our Paul Lee at the News Center. Paul, let's start with the devastating news out of Malaysia. After more than 2 weeks of searching, we hear that the authorities have confirmed their worst fears.
A sad end and a tragic day. That was how the CEO of Malaysia Airlines framed the latest on missing Flight 370. His comments came one day after Malaysia's Prime Minister announced that the plane likely crashed in the southern Indian Ocean. However, the search for the wreckage was called off Tuesday due to bad weather. Our Shin Se-min reports.
This is a sad and tragic day for all of us at Malaysia Airlines. This news is clearly devastating for the families of those on board.
The CEO of Malaysia Airlines held a news conference Tuesday in Kuala Lumpur to send his condolences to the family members of the passengers and to outline steps the airline is taking for the families. The airline has offered family members $5,000 for each passenger aboard Flight 370 and additional payments as the search continues. This follows a Malaysian Prime Minister's announcement the day before that the ill-fated flight came down somewhere in the remote southern Indian Ocean with no chance of anyone survived. Despair and rage exploded among relatives of the Chinese passengers on board that plane in Beijing after receiving the news many had feared but didn't want to believe.
I want to tell the journalists, the information they just sent, it is not true.
In a damning statement given to the media, the families accused Malaysia Airlines and the Malaysian government and military of being, quote, the real executioners who killed the missing jet passengers. They said the shameless behavior misguided and delayed the rescue actions, wasting a large quantity of human resources and materials, and lost valuable time for the rescue effort. The jet vanished on March 8 with 239 people on board after it took off from Kuala Lumpur en route to Beijing. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Our thoughts and prayers certainly go out to the families of the victims who must be going through a very difficult time right now. Paul, let's move on to Russia's exclusion from this year's G8 meeting. It looks like Western powers are trying to put more pressure on Moscow over the crisis in Ukraine.
That's right, Jay. On the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague, the leaders of the G7 all announced they would instead hold their own summit this year in Brussels. They condemned what they called Russia's illegal attempt to annex Crimea and promised to work together to cut their dependence on Russian oil and gas.
Well, we should be clear, there's not going to be a G8 summit this year in Russia. That's absolutely clear. We'll be meeting tonight the 7 other countries of the G8 to determine the way forward. But frankly, it is Russia that needs to change course.
In response, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov shrugged off the snub and the possibility of Russia's expulsion from the alliance as, quote, no great tragedy.
Right, Paul, over now to the United States. President Obama is reportedly planning to curb the NSA's massive surveillance program. What kind of limits are being considered?
Well, the Obama administration is planning to propose legislation that would shut down the National Security Agency's controversial collection of telephone data from millions of Americans. That's according to the New York Times, which cited unnamed senior administration officials in their online report. Their proposal would mean that communication records would stay in the hands of phone companies and only be available to the NSA through a court order. The report also said the White House is planning other major changes to the agency's surveillance programs. A bipartisan bill on the new measures is expected to be introduced on Tuesday.
And lastly, Paul, before we let you go, tell us about the UN meeting on climate change that kicked off in Japan. What are we likely to see from the conference?
Well, scientists and more than 100 government representatives have gathered in the Japanese city of Yokohama to hammer out details for a UN report on how to deal with and mitigate climate change. The meeting will discuss how rapid climate change caused by rising greenhouse gas emissions is disrupting global food supplies and hampering economic growth. But it's not all doom and gloom. The co-chair of the main working group, Christopher Field, said there was still time to build a better world.
Climate change really is one of the defining challenges of the 21st century, and the IPCC is uniquely positioned to allow policymakers, all the way from individuals to international organizations, to deal effectively, robustly, and optimistically with the challenging future.
The full UN report is expected to be released at the end of the conference on March 31st. Ji-hye?
All right, Paul, thank you very much for that report. We'll see you back in just about 2 hours. Let's get an update on the weather with our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Now, Bo-kyung, will our viewers need an umbrella on their ways home?
Well, Tia, I would grab one just in case. Although it's not raining here in Seoul, some parts of the southern regions are seeing heavy rainfall at this hour. Taking a closer look at the current conditions, the nation is under the influence of a low-pressure trough from the southwest, which is why we're seeing cloudy skies and drizzles nationwide. A heavy rainfall watch has been issued on the mountains of Jeju, where over 60 millimeters of precipitation may fall through tomorrow evening. The central regions, including Seoul, can expect a little less than 5 millimeters. Other than that, the dry weather warning continues to be in effect in Gangwon-do province, so make sure to keep yourselves hydrated. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, it looks like we're going to enjoy early summer temperatures tomorrow. Seoul jumps to 21 degrees, while cities down south make it to the mid-teens. Moving on to other regions, Jeju starts off the day at 14 degrees with a high of 17, while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to 12 and 14. That's all the updates for Korea, and here's a look at the international weather.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul. I'll be back with more news updates on our primetime news at 10 p.m. Korea time. See you then.